What's up, guys? Welcome to agility / change of direction day 1. Let's see if I can get that to look pretty good. Yeah, that's not too bad. So here's what we're going to go over today. Do a warm-up. I'm really going to abbreviate that just because you guys have seen it from me several times over. I might throw one or two things new in there or just kind of emphasize another thing or two. And then we're going to drop in some movements that are really going to emphasize cutting as well as just lateral movement in general. And then we'll finish up with a few drills at the end. Might sprinkle some more in there that are not typed up right now. So here we go. Okay, mobilization, ankles, hips, T-spine. I would say that when it comes to cutting and change direction, an athlete's ability to get into that low athletic position where they're taking all the energy and force that's coming in one direction and then they're consolidating it and preparing to go in the other direction, I'd say that mobility is a pretty big issue for us, specifically in our ankle, hip, and T-spine. So that's something that I would, prior to an agility or change direction day, that's something that I would emphasize as far as mobilizing. So I'll do like a quick run through of a few ankle movements real quick. Just try to keep you guys fresh on these. Again, a real easy one is just some rotations with no resistance or assistance. Just like that. Yeah, super easy. I'm going to do a few the other way just so I don't get lopsided. And you might want to go both ways on that. You could even reach over, and while you're rotating, you could assist the movement a little bit. I don't know how much of that I would do as far as assistance or working on new range of motion. I wouldn't go crazy on that right before a change of direction day with ballistic and dynamic movements. That might be something that's better saved for a more linear day or a maybe just away from activity. But you can work ankle mobility there. You can do some banded work to play around with your rotation, pronation, supination, or inversion and eversion. All right, let's say I did it on both sides there. Again, not one that I would do just prior to activity, but just something simple like this. I call it like a 70-30 stretch, putting 70% of my weight on that front ankle and 30% of my weight on that back ankle. So my front ankle is being, my calf is getting stretched, and my back ankle, my anterior tib is getting stretched out. So getting something from both ways there. I can't say that I see a whole lot of issues with like dorsiflexion extension, plantar flexion extension. So I don't know with a field athlete, I don't know that I would spend a whole lot of time on this or really emphasize it for the plantar flexion portion of it. But that dorsiflexion is a common issue, and just that ankle mobility, if it's an issue for an athlete, it's like an anchor. It just drags them down. It ruins their squat patterns, their ability to change direction. Let's say they trust that ankle, and that's another topic that I'll probably brush up on again soon. Shortly, not necessarily. We haven't really covered it before, but the ability to trust your joints as an athlete, that you're going to go in and make an athletic movement and be okay. If someone's had an injury prior or beforehand, that can be a big issue. So some of the drills that we're doing, just simply doing some baby steps and taking them back into athletic movements and activities, psychologically that can be a game changer that just lets them know that they're actually healed and that they're okay and that they can go out and perform. So ankles, let's call that good on ankles. Hips. Oh man, I'm super stiff right now, so the hips are super stiff. So a little bit uglier than usual with my 90-90 hip switch. But I'll throw in a few on each side, a couple on each side, and just try to get me prepared for some of this movement I'm about to do. That we are about to do. I know you guys are watching a little bit and pausing and then performing some movements wherever you are. So make sure that you are taking your time and getting prepared for success. I know quite a few strength coaches who have gotten tweaks and even little surgery, like even little injuries that necessitate surgery just while they're demoing exercises. And I'm not gonna lie, I've had little strains here and there just because I'm not doing any warm-up prior to coaching, and I go on the coaching floor and I want to demonstrate what I want, and maybe I'm even picking up weights that other athletes are using, things like that. So not the smartest thing on my end, but yeah, just something to watch out for. So we're on hips. We got some 90-90s. We can get into our world's greatest. This is also gonna get some of that T-spine, so I'm not mad about that. Could do some palm squat with rotation. So bend over, grab the toes, pull yourself down into a squat, hands on ground. One hand that's on the ground is going to push into the ground and help you rotate a few extra inches there. I'll go one each way. I'll pick my head up, stand up, bend over at the waist, grab my toes, pull myself down into a squat, palms on ground, hand up, bottom hand is pushing into the ground to help me get another inch or two into position. My eyes follow my top fingers. That's getting me pretty loose down the hips. It's helping out with that T-spine as well. Hips. You know what, let's throw in some lateral lunges just because we're going to need to get in a low position for some of the change of direction movements that we're going to do. Sometimes I'll even throw in a little rotation there. And then T-spine. We hit some of the world's greatest stretch already. Just come through here. Do some half kneeling open books. Pretty easy one. It's going to help hit my hip flexor just a little bit as well for my knee that is down. I'm going to take a breath in. Exhale and rotate. That down hand is pushing on that knee inside, helping me get just a few more degrees of rotation out of that. Again, this warm-up is abbreviated. If I was going to do a true session on myself, or if I was leading a group of athletes through it and we were going to be gung-ho about it, I would build out this warm-up longer. We'd do more reps of the things that we are doing. We'd spend more time on everything. Nice. So not the most dynamic warm-up. So now that I know I'm going to be doing a dynamic day in the weight room, I would add in some more dynamic activities. So some movements that are going to just prep me for some of that warming up. So moving around a little bit, just anything with some actual movement into it. Get my heart rate up just a little bit. And again, I'm doing a couple of reps on each of these, whereas on a true session, I would maybe do instead of doing the movement for 2 yards, I would maybe do it for 10 yards or as much as 20 yards on some of these. So we did lunge with high reach into a quad stretch, high reach. Here's an ankle cradle. I was kind of lazy on that last one. Let me do that one again. Grabbing that ankle and pushing my hips through. See me lose my balance. Tells us my core is not activated. I may not necessarily be paying the best attention to my surroundings and my body. Do some knuckle drags. I like following that one up with some crossover kicks. On those crossover kicks, I would start low and easy and then build up a little bit higher as I go. Get to do some knee hugs into the body and across the midline. Into the body and across the midline. And at this point, I'm pretty loose, even though I'm just giving you guys a fraction of the reps that I'll be doing. I'm feeling way better than I was, 3 minutes ago. So at this point, I would maybe pick things up a little bit and make it a little bit more dynamic. So I know that my emphasis today in the workout is going to be cutting and lateral direction, or lateral movement, excuse me. So I don't necessarily need to do a whole bunch of that in the warm-up, because I'm going to spend my time in the workout doing that, and I know that my workout is not going to be automatically full speed. So normally I might do some shuffling or some karaoke or some strafing in the workout, or in the warm-up, pardon me. But because I'm doing that in my workout and I'm really going to be emphasizing the minutia and the little nuances of that, I would say for a warm-up, we're probably done there. We're probably pretty happy with that. So I'm going to leave my warm-up at that, just because I know that in the workout I would get a more elaborate warm-up as well. Oh, I forgot to do some potentiation, excuse me. So a little lazy on my part, sorry about that. So I like some ice skaters just for a simple potentiation. We can start small and build up. And again, I would do maybe a set of those to warm up a little bit, and then have another aggressive set. So I'll try to build up and get a little more air time. All right, a little bit of technical difficulties there. I think my ice skaters were a little too explosive. Kind of like threw off the technology a little bit there. But I had some ice skaters, and then I had some pogos. Pogos, when I hit a batch of pogos or I assign them, I usually assign them for 10 to 20 reps. And the biggest thing there is I just like that they give us a little bit of hip stability. Not necessarily triple extension, because we're not having a whole lot of hip action, not having a whole lot of knee action. But those ankles are getting a lot of action there. So we're stabilizing at the hips and the knees, and then we're getting that ankle extension there. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press and I'm gonna pull my toes up with me. And so I'm also practicing that dorsiflexion, which is gonna be pretty important when we're sprinting and doing a lot of our mechanic work, right? So it's just an opportunity to practice that little ability or that little skill set of pulling your toes up with you in that dorsiflexion, which seems simple, but you'd be amazed at how much time I spend coaching that or reminding athletes to do that. All right. So now that we're warm, today we're going to emphasize cutting. So a few different drills for us. We'll call this first one sort of freeze frame. Try to put us where we can see pretty decent. On this freeze frame, so I would talk to the athlete a little bit about what I'm looking for, what I want, about with a cut. So specifically, if I can get someone coming in and cutting and turning 180 degrees, everything after that sort of seems like it's easier to teach. So if I can start with a 180 degree turn, everything else after that,
that's the pattern I've fallen into, and I kind of like it. So, but with freeze frame, you might start them on sort of point A, and then you have them run to point B, the cone, and then return point A. So just walking through it, they might be sprinting, running, touch. Okay, so how's this? How am I looking here? 3 issues I would say that I get with that touch point is athletes are bending instead of sinking. I want that athlete, as they approach, I want their hips to sink. With that foot placement, I want a wide base. With a wider base, my center of mass is contained within my base, and I'm able to change direction and be reactive and be athletic. If somebody runs up all that cone and they've got a narrow stance and they bend over, they're going to be so slow getting out of that position. Now, if it was a race to the cone, if they were doing something like that, that's fine. You know, sometimes in track meets you even see athletes diving across the finish line. But if we're trying to do a little bit more, if it's a little bit more complex than that, they need to stay on their feet and turn and return. Then what we're looking for is sinking, not bending over, foot placement for a wide base, and a brace core. I'm going to stop right now and return to this, but I'll talk about where I learned some of these things and sort of my foundation for information on this. Comes from a few different sources. Well, I'll name 2 big sources. One is that I went and worked with the University of Missouri football strength staff over the summer of 2012. And they spent some time emphasizing drills and exercises like this that specifically, yes, they help athletes be better athletes, but it also ties into becoming an NFL candidate and going to the combine and hopefully getting an NFL contract. And as I first entered the space of coaching, you know, I thought the idea of getting an athlete into the NFL was cool and kind of neat or whatever. But once I became a sort of a part of it or entered that world of it, I realized that, you know, playing in the NFL isn't the end-all be-all. It's not something for me that makes me kind of get out of bed every day in the morning. But it is exciting to help a young man achieve their dreams, and I'm all about that. I love coaching people to helping them achieve their dreams and goals and things like that. So if the NFL is that athlete's goal/dream, I'm in, count me in. But after I was around it a little bit more, I was able to see some athletes go from maybe struggling young men to wealthy NFL players. You realize that by doing what we do, we can actually help people not only change their own lives and improve the quality of their own lives, but for some of these young men, we can help them go out and change the wealth of their whole family, and maybe even a couple of generations down the road for their family. So you're able to help people have a massive impact on their lives. So it's kind of funny that little things like this and how we touch and sweep and place our foot can lead to that. So a couple of big sources for me were University of Missouri strength staff in 2012, and also Coach Joe DeFranco, who just puts out a lot of information. You can buy books, you can listen to his podcasts, you can attend seminars that he's at, and he sort of gained notoriety by helping individuals go perform at the NFL combines, and he was figuring out little hacks and secrets to performing better on all the tests. So some of what I'm going to be talking about today is really pulled from those 2 resources, and now that several years past me being introduced to both of those resources, I've taken what they've preached and taught, and I've practiced it with myself and my athletes. I've had success with it. So is it the only way? No. Is it the best way? I hope so. And it's just successful. So having used these things, that's where I'm pulling them from. It's a little bit of my own personal opinion, but I'm pulling them from some pretty reputable sources. So that's where a lot of this is coming from today. So especially with the body positioning. So, all right, back on track here. You know, you can't get through a video with me without going on like 1 or 2 tangents, right? So, going into my cutting position, I'm looking for sinking, not bending. So I want my hips to get low. I want a wide base. I want my center of mass within my wide base. And I want a brace core. So, back to our freeze frame drill. All right, you say, go. They're gonna plant. So my foot is gonna be kind of on line with that cone or that line or whatever I've got to touch. I'm gonna be on line with it or possibly further. And what that's gonna allow me to do is stay within my base. My center of mass can stay within my base, and I can sweep or grab or touch or do whatever. And when I set up my feet, I'm already on my way back. So I'm shifted, my hips are turned, my foot is planted, I'm ready to triple extend out of that position, right? So for freeze frame, just send them out and tell them something along the lines of, go out and freeze and be ready to come back. So I'll plant. I'm in an okay position right now. Yes, I sunk my hips, but I'm also bent over a little bit, so I could be up. Maybe my hips could be a little bit lower. I could be here. And then what I want to do is triple extend. So I'd freeze here, and then you could have several athletes doing it. And as coach, you can walk down and talk to them about their body position, things like that. So wherever I am, wherever I was, I want to be here because when I go back that way, when I'm in my acceleration phase, I want to be leaning. Right? We've talked about that in our past couple of lectures for speed and for agility, is that there's that acceleration phase where you want that forward lean. It's going to assist us because we like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Kevin Sorbo in those Walking Tall movies, but there's a time and a place to walk tall, and it's not in the middle of a change of direction, all right? So that's our freeze frame drill. Come in, have them freeze, and see where they're at. You can coach them up about where that foot is, what the torso is doing, and you can sort of coach them into their next step out of that. So I think I like the freeze frame drill as sort of a base foundational movement. And we've talked about the importance of foundational movements. Pardon me, something in my eye. We've talked about the importance of foundational movements even for top tier athletes, maybe even especially for top tier athletes, because if their fundamentals and foundational movements fall to the wayside, that's going to impact their performance on higher end skills. Freeze frame, the progressive single leg raise, or single leg base, excuse me. 17 eyelashes in my eye right now. This is terrible. All right. I think I'll be okay though. Okay. I like this one because it allows me to prepare my athletes to decelerate. And you know, we spend all this time stronger, more explosive, more powerful, faster, all that stuff. But do we spend time teaching them how to decelerate? It's like taking a car and adding a bigger engine and maybe some like rocket fuel and giving all this extra horsepower, but you leave the same old braking mechanism in there. We might need some to supercharge our brakes along with all of our new power output, right? So I like this drill because it works on our deceleration, and it's going to more specifically help with knee stability and the athlete's ability to stabilize. So in my mind, this is going to be this slow and can't maintain balance, what's going to happen when I'm out on a sporting field and need to find position and own that position? Could be trouble. And then forward, and then lateral, right? So that's, you just have to walk through to get a little bit of practice, and then you can have them jog through. Jog it, and stick that position. Jog it, jog it, jog it, stick that position. Jog it, jog it, jog it, and stick that position. Whoa, up. So, this can progress again. And what I would do is, I just walked it and then I jogged it there, but then what I could do is I could lengthen the cones instead of having, 8 or 9 feet in between cones, I could have 15 feet. And I could go from jogging to running. So you can progress it there. And again, I wouldn't necessarily do that on day one, but you can start by just having them do little baby steps. There's nothing wrong with taking your time with athletes, even great athletes, top high performing, award-winning athletes who've been recognized and are champions or whatever. There's nothing wrong with taking your time to establish great movement patterns and grease the groove, and then make it more complex and complicated later. So we walked it to train it, to practice it. We jogged it with short gaps. You could then lengthen the gaps and jog it, or maybe even start running a little bit. And then you can take away the predetermined stop points. So, it's the exact same drill, the exact same sequence, but instead of, you just ignore the cones, they don't matter. And you just say go, and I'm just going to do it walking. Say go, and then you say stop, and then they have to find that position. And you say go, and then you say stop, and they have to find that position. You say go, say stop. They weren't ready, and then they go like that. So you just do go and stop, and then it's going to become a little bit more, it's going to translate a little bit more into sport, because now instead of predetermined stopping points, unless you're a track and field athlete, doesn't always work like that. Or you can say red light, green lights, and then they feel like they're little kids and like they're just playing instead. So nothing wrong with that. So that would be our progressive single leg base. All right, for a lateral motion, again with decelerating and cutting, what's going to happen a lot of times is that you're just going to end up in a lateral position. So better to practice that ahead of time, I think. All right, so 2 movements that I would try to introduce you all to, if you're not familiar with them already. First one I would call a strafe. So it's a lateral motion with a step over in front. My chest and my perspective is going to stay forward. What I really think of when I think of this, I played outfield in baseball in 6th grade, and so it kind of reminds me of that. But it's also just something that's going to take, maybe in small spurts it will occur in other sports, and then when we do a 5-10-5 drill a little bit here, it's going to resurface and be applicable there as well. So my chest and my perspective stay forward, but my hips are going to pivot. And I'm going to have that big crossover step out front. So you can do it on a march. Speed it up just a little bit. Again, with the prowler on the sled, you can put weight on it. You can put a lot of weight on it to build strength. You can put as much weight on it as is needed to slow things down. Because sometimes that strafe is a funky movement to teach, but you put a little weight on it so that the athletes can use it while they're training, And then as a coach, you can walk alongside them and say, no, okay, do this. Okay, yeah, but bring your chest forward. So with the sleds and prowlers, so many options, such a diverse tool for just being a hunk of metal that you drag around. Really something to consider. And if you don't have it, just take a band or a rope, and one athlete can loop it around the other athlete's waist and just weigh them down and just slow them down. And that way, the coaching goes up, the athlete's understanding seems to go up, and you're challenging it, you're doing something different. So if you're challenging it enough where you're creating some progressive overload, then you're increasing strength in that movement pattern and you're increasing rate of force development. Not a terrible thing when you're talking about trying to make athletes more powerful and faster, right? So that was our strafe, is what I call it. I've heard it called many things, but that's my go-to term. We're gonna do a shuffle. So on this shuffle, pretty darn simple, but I say people still find a way to screw it up. That's all right though. We're here to make them better. On the shuffle, what I want you guys to emphasize is it's a wide base. We're down below, we're athletic. That shuffle is not an efficient way to travel. The shuffle is a backup movement because you don't know where you're going to go next, right? You're shuffling because you might need to go that way, or at any second, right? If you're shuffling and your feet are clacking together, or they're landing right next to each other, you're arguably kind of wasting your time. If you're shuffling, we tend to try to keep that in a wider base. I'm sure I'm wrong that there's some exception, that there's a population that should, when they shuffle, their feet should come together. But for many athletes, that's not the case. So again, just shuffling, just training that low position, that lead foot is going to pull, and that lagging foot is going to push. And when I shuffle, I think about Coach Dion Melvin. Coach Melvin, if athletes are shuffling and their feet are clacking together, even you're from across the field, hey, no clacking! Keep your feet apart, you know? And so just listen to him kind of yell over my shoulder and keep these athletes from clacking their feet together. It just stuck with me. So whatever it is, if you guys need to channel Coach Melvin, but just remember that we just want to be athletic and have a purpose. Shuffling is, it's a nice little movement for warming up, but not really the most athletic movement to travel around a court on for no purpose, right? So, right, we got a few drills to go through. We're gonna do some box drills, some L drills, and some 5-10-5s. All right, box drill, L drill, 5-10-5. But what the square drill lets us do is start to combine and integrate some different movement patterns together. So I can do a sprint to a shuffle How did I do there? Did I bring my feet together a little bit? Would Coach Muppet be barking at me? Maybe. To a back pedal. To a shuffle. Okay, now I'm shuffling a little bit better. I was a little lazy on that first shuffle. So we can integrate it like that. Sprint. Straight. Back pedal. Straight. And then obviously, you know, I don't know if you guys ever played the game Pac-Man or Snake, where everything moves on 90-degree angles. That's not real life. So you use that box drill, and you just throw a cone in the middle, and you can do something along the lines of having a base position, and then making athletes move diagonally out to different cones. So maybe it's 1, 2, 3, 4. You say 1, and after back pedal tap, come back to center. 2, and make it come back to center. And then 3, and finish with that 4. So going forward, you can shuffle. You might get a crossover step in, depending on where you're at, what you're doing. Backwards is normally going to be a shuffle, and then you might crossover step back in. You can play it by ear after you train that, or you can sort of demand it. So let's say I'm going to go to 1 and 4, and I'm going to shuffle back and crossover step in. I'm going to go slow first to set the groove. So shuffle, shuffle, tap, crossover step, shuffle, shuffle, tap, crossover step. That feels pretty natural. Going forward, I'm going to hit a crossover step, and then a shuffle. So that cone's kind of in my way, so it kind of changes a little bit. But going backwards, the dropping shuffle feels good, and the crossover step back into place feels good. So work those different skills in however you like. That's the box drill. Let's go over the L drill. L drill. I would label this as an okay drill. I don't know that I'm doing this drill with athletes that are not preparing for the NFL Combine. This is pretty specific NFL Combine. I'll talk on it briefly, kind of share a little bit of what I know about it, and then let's move on. Yeah, here we go. So we'll start in a 3-point stance. Let's go right hand only. Come out of it. You have to touch the ground. Go right hand. When you come back, you must touch right hand again. So, first thing, L drill has athletes running in a circle. Right hand to right hand means you're running in a circle. Not super athletic. Alright, but you ran in a little circle here, and then you come out. You're out and run around this cone here. And then around this corner here. And then through the finish line, right? So, I don't like how specific and small it is, but I do like the curvilinear running, right? I do like that it makes us run in a tight circle over there. And then I do like the running around the crowd here, because sometimes on a soccer field, you have a couple players that you got to get around in a hurry. Maybe they're not in a great position and you are. Or you kick a ball one way, you do a little give and go, and you're working your way around an opponent. Football, if you're like a pulling guard and you're running, if you're working your way down around basically all the men on the line, and you're gonna attack from the side there, you're doing some curvilinear running. So it's kind of super specific. So and I don't love it. I wouldn't say I spend a lot of time on athletes who aren't trained for the NFL Combine on it, but it has pros and cons. to do a full stand-up on this. About 5 yards. Hopefully staying down pretty low. A quick moment of being upright before decelerating. My foot's gonna plant on or past that line so I can swipe. I don't know if I was even on that one there. I'm gonna get back, starting to set on, past the line, swipe, come out here, break around that, so I'm starting my curve linear running out. What you really need to watch on this with high-end athletes, and especially the shorter, leaner guys, is it's almost like an optical illusion, almost like kind of like a special effect. They almost run really lean at quite the angle. And it makes me think about Reggie Bush. I've seen Reggie Bush do it, and on a football field, he'd be running around defenders and dodging tackles, and his hand would plant the ground, and he'd pop up and stay up. I've also seen Lionel Messi do it on a soccer field. Be bumped, plant his hand, and stay up, and keep moving. So it's just a great indicator of athletic ability, or at least, maybe that's not true, maybe it's just impressive and it's entertaining to watch. So, they come out here, they're going to take that corner hard, lean into it, because when they come out of it, they want to be moving pretty fast. So you do the same thing there, and then they're back through here for the finish line. I'll give you guys a little bit of a little taste. I'll give you a little athlete right here. Yep. Step on line, sweep. Step over, sweep. Yeah. So there's a little taste of the juice. So beware. All right. So we did our square drill, our box drill. We did our L drill. Now this is our 5-10-5. Not measured out perfectly. Sort of a guesstimate. 5-10-5, I'd say. The 3 drills we've shown today, this is my favorite drill. This is one I'll do with any team that's going to need change direction. Easy to teach. Easy to set up, self-contained, you don't need a whole lot more space, maybe a little bit of extra space for the final coasting, but also really easy to gamify, and I'll talk about how I gamify it as well. So if there's a line right here, I'm going to straddle that line. I'm going to put my whatever hand down. Whatever hand is down, I'm going to go the opposite way. Right hand down. I'm going to go left. Plant, get my sweeping touch. That was pretty crummy one. That was pretty stiff hips on my part. I'm going to turn and sprint. Touch, sweep. Now, most of the time I spend on this, I'm sprinting, but actually that first stretch, I'm going to do some strafe steps. I found, because again, at University of Missouri, as well as Joe Franco, these people they're either making money directly or they just have a really high interest in mastering this movement. They found that it's faster not to fully commit and open up on this first 5 yards. You really just want a partial commitment, sort of that strafing movement. Over here, tap, turn, fully commit, forward sprint. In our previous lecture day for agility versus change direction, we talked about building a roof. Now that I've made that first point of contact, I'm going to build a roof. Because I'm accelerating out, I'm standing tall for a few big steps, and then I'm going to decelerate and get my 15, me and Coach Richie Handy were working on making something, a fun challenge for our football team. And we sort of decided or came up with using these cones for gamifying the 5-10-5 to create a race out of it. And I've been doing it pretty regularly since then. And all you do is set this cone down on the line out there. And you tell athletes, they can whichever way they want, whatever. If I'm going that way, I'm going to go left hand down. Hop here. Run. Grab. Keep running. Keep running. Keep running. Plant it on the line. Turn. Run to finish. As an athlete, that's what you do. As a coach, what you do is you can set up several little cones over there. And then you have several athletes that are associated with each cone. And then as a coach, all I do is I'm going to watch the starting line, aka the finish line. I don't care to watch them pick up the cone. I don't care to watch them set the cone down. Because you got to remember, things are happening fast. And I don't want to miss the winner, right? That's entertaining. Like if you get somebody else to judge the line, then you can enjoy the show and watching people like slip and trip and drop cones. And, you know, it gets pretty dramatic pretty quick. But as a coach, I'm going to watch this line. And as I come across the finish line, I'm going to pay attention to the first couple athletes that finish. And then I'm going to turn my head over and see that their cone is upright and on the line. Because things are moving so fast and are so dynamic and exciting that sometimes they set the cone down and then they kick it as they're stepping away from it. Or they set it off the line, or it tips over because they had a bad put down. So even though they won the drill, they ran faster than everybody else, they didn't execute better than everybody else. So if the first person across the line, if their cone is over, that means the next person who has a cone that's successfully planted wins the race. And I love that drill for a few reasons. One is I played a part in creating it. So it's kind of got like that. It's a baby to me, right? I'm sure a million other people have created the same thing or something better, but I had a part in creating that from my own experience. So I like it because of that, but I also like that it's forcing athletes to get low. They got to get down and grab it. Hopefully they're not bending over, but they're sinking into it. It has attention to detail. You know, they're picking it up from one spot and setting it down on another spot. They've got a very thin margin of line when you're out on the field. So that line is, you know, like 5 inches wide, and they've got a small little spot to put it on. So it's got to be on that line, right? And it's dramatic and exciting. It's a fun little race, and it gets my change of direction on point. So those are some of the things that I like about that drill. And I would say it's the most common one that I bring to the masses. So a big part of my career was working with football players. So we did box drills, L drills, and the 5-10-5 because it was a football related. And you know what happens in the NFL Combine sort of gets trickled down to like Pee Wee League football for some reason. But that is a drill that is just simple and kind of worth visiting. All right, guys, I think that's it for the day. That is Agility and Change Direction Day 1. See you guys on Day 2.